I sometimes have to refactor overly complex code, and then I sometimes rewrite that code and I make it even more complex. And the thing with that kind of work is that it's very easy to criticize other people, but it's very hard to reflect for yourself. And I see quite often junior developers do this even more than I do, because they usually think that their solution is the thing that's going to be used in the future. Hello, my name is Till Carlos, and here on this YouTube channel, I'm building products with my team and we're documenting how we do so. And today we're going to talk about early abstractions that will kill you. And this is something that actually, it's not an invention of me, it's something that Donald Knuth said. Premature abstraction is the root of all evil. Yes, and this YouTube video is actually inspired by this blog post here, which I found on Hacker News. Thank you for this, Aaron. The core of the whole thing is that people think their abstractions are going to get used in the future, but usually they don't. And on the last Ruby conference where I was in Europe, I talked to Eileen. Eileen writes this blog on eileencodes.com. And she said, I asked her, how do software projects fail? And she said, due to too much complexity out of the gate, that's when you end up with a failing project. And just yesterday, one of my team members sent me this message, and I want you to read it and have a look of where your trigger goes off. So basically, he had a suggestion about some higher level classes to create and manage something. And I was just having some objection. And he said this, that it's going to be used more in one place and so on. Its domain knowledge will be duplicated in many places. Do you spot the keyword where you should be very cautious? It is this one. My rationale is that it's going to be used. So this is an assumption. Assumptions have a huge problem. If you're wrong, everything is bad. So my mentor once said, if you're assuming, you should be scared. You should never assume, you should know. What then happened was that I asked this engineer to give me a sample, and he sent me code and we can look at it right now. So what he said, and this is a sample project that he just built very fast in like an hour or so just to prove the case. So he has two approaches. One is more like an object-oriented approach with services, and then a more functional approach where this technically is like a service class with a functional call. And both are doing the same thing. It doesn't really matter so much which of these approaches we take. I think both of them are wrong, and you will see in a bit why. Just to go real quick into the services. So this service that we just had inherits from base service, and they bring all these kind of things with it. And it looks good to start with. We have some translations, which we use in Ruby on Rails, and we have this call method, so you don't need to call new and then call. Okay, great. When we look deeper into this, we see this class here. And this is now the service class where the users get aggregated, and then we create rows, like just an array of rows. And then we throw this into the generate CSV class. And the generate CSV class, we can look at this right now. This looks like this. So if you don't spot the problem right now, and I told you before, this is, I believe the main problem is that we're assuming that something will happen in the future. This might be the best solution ever if you are really sure that this class is going to get used at least 10 times, but we're not sure about this. And what now happens is that this developer would create this class and it would only be used once or maybe twice. And now what we have is here another class for generate CSV. Then we have another class for the service. We have the base service class, and then in the end we're going to use that. So I'm all for moving logic out of the controller into some library, but we don't need all this stuff for that. So let me just refactor this real quick and have a look at how we can make this better. So first, we already have a better naming. We use a clear name for what we're going to call. So this is the class we're going to use, and we don't repeat the same naming of it. So we don't need to say generate user CSV. You just can say generate CSV, and thus we have our call already. Okay, so I moved this just into the same file just to keep it simple, because I didn't want to create a new file for this demo. But this is basically what we can just use already. We can move this even into the models folder or a lib folder for sure. But this is just everything we need. We also don't need to repeat this CSV generate. We don't need to move this to their own class because it is so simple. It's just 4 lines. So just by starting this would be the best approach, at least for now, until we know that this is actually going to get used like more than 5 times. Okay, let's recap. How can we get out of this premature optimization or premature abstraction trap? The first thing is, first we duplicate code. So let's say we don't want just to export users, we also want to export user comments. We can export the same service class and we just use it twice, and then we have a lot of duplicate code. We violated DRY, so don't repeat yourself as violated. but we can move for now. We can see if this is really the thing that's going to get used for many, many more times. And then if later on we really need more, we need to use this more, and we then really need an abstraction like a small DSL in our app, okay, cool. But I would wait until we have duplicated this like at least 3, 4, 5 times. The second thing we can do is we can look at what is the standard way to do things. So for example, in this case, I don't know of any kind of package we can use for the exporter, but let's say we want to do some kind of authorization. We want to check if the user is actually allowed to do something. Let's say the user is the actual user who's logged in. We could code this ourselves, but maybe we go a bit about doing some online research and then seeing if other people have solved the same problem. And if they did, maybe there is a Ruby gem for that so-called package in our ecosystem that we can just tap into. By doing that, we would then not need to write that code, and someone else might have solved the whole problem much better than we did. I want to point here to this one example. I copied this from the thing called Writebook from 37 Signals. They have made a repository, a tool where people can publish their own books. And I believe it's even free, or at least it was for some time. You can grab a copy and look at the code yourself. And this is how they do that. They just have a class, and it's basically the same thing that I just did, but they even leave it in the model folder. I don't know if that's becoming standard. I don't believe so. Especially for larger apps, you shouldn't put everything into the model folder. However, this is a cool approach because it's a very small app, so why overcomplicate it? Why just put it there? And then I think they even have a first run controller somewhere. Yeah, exactly. So it's all clear to see, and it's all clear where you would look up the files if you needed them. Okay, and to the third and last thing, you only go abstract if you respect these 4 questions. So you can ask those 3 questions, and then these are also questions you can send to your next junior if someone comes to your desk and ask if they should abstract something. So let's go through this list right now. The first thing is, have you seen this pattern coming up somewhere? Is that if you think you have the perfect solution, like a totally new way to do things, you're usually wrong. And that's something I would like to tell every junior. It's cool if they explore it on their own term, or if they want to learn something, but on a production app, usually things have been done before. So your great idea is probably not really necessary here because it has been done before. Then, are real lines of code saved? If we go back to our example here, those are the 4 lines for the CSV generation. Do we really need 12 lines of an own class, and then an own class that we also need to test? So we probably have at least 26 new lines introduced just to save 4 lines? I don't believe so. And then the third thing is super important. Whenever we're doing an abstraction, it usually adds the mental overhead to the other team members reading that code. So the question is, does this new abstraction actually help you understand it? I want to get back to this 37 Signals repository here, right? This class is called first run. So if you would only see this code, account create, account name, what is this? So you make an admin and then demo content. It doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but if you put this into the context of first run, and then the controller basically says, you only do the first one, and later surrounding this create call, they have something where the user gets blocked if the user already exists. So it makes more sense here. In this case, it makes sense to wrap it into the first run class because it helps the next developer understand what is meant. So this actually adds value here. And the fourth thing, of course, are the developers easy to work with your abstraction? If the answer is no to that, you should not abstract. Yeah. And if ever some junior comes to you and asks you for advice, send them this blog post. And also, do you disagree with me? Send me a message on Twitter on till_Carlos.